It's time for number 4 in my series of comic book movie reviews, with an adaptation that's going to be kind of difficult to review, if you will. Yeah, we'll go with that. Up in Flames is brought to us by director John Seaman and stars Colleen Anderson, Richard Mailer, Harry Lewis, and John Seaman. Up in Flames is an adaptation of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers underground comics. Now, me personally, I have never heard of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, but they're more or less 3 brothers that are just stoners, and it was like this really popular underground comic back in the 60s and 70s. As far as I can tell, it's just 3 stoner slobs just making it through the world, and there's also another character that's like an old man called Mr. Natural. Now, depending on where you look, this movie is listed as coming out in either 1973 or 1978. I found equal record of it being made in both of those years, so I'm not really sure. I'm gonna call it 1973 because that's where I initially found it under, but it may have come out in 1978. So as far as the chronological nature of my series goes, I'm just gonna call this 73, but it might be a little bit later in the series. Who the fuck am I kidding? Nobody's gonna watch this fucking movie. Now, much like number 2 in my series, Fritz the Cat, this movie is rated X, but unlike Fritz the Cat, this movie is rated X for totally different reasons. Well, maybe not totally different reasons. Fritz the Cat had a lot of fucking and stuff in it too, but it was rated X for like a whole bunch of stuff, violence, themes, and all that. This is rated X because, well, Up in Flames is just a straight up fucking porn. And I don't mean like Cinemax After Dark Skinemax porn. I mean like straight up hardcore YouPorn porn. OG 70s waka 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 wow wow kind of really hairy porn. That kind of porn. You know that old school shit like Boogie Nights style? That's what this is it. Make no bones about it. This movie is straight up hardcore fucking porn. But it is technically a comic book movie. Not some bullshit comic book movie either. It is actually based on an actual comic book. So it fits into the series, and I, as a completionist, had to view it and review it. I did it for you guys, really, I did. So the basic story of this movie is pretty much that the 3 freak brothers, they live in kind of this shithole apartment, and their landlady has come up and said, hey, you know, it's time for rent. They don't have any rent because they're pretty much just layabout slobs, and the whole movie, they're just going around trying to figure out a way to make their rent money. That's it. One of them goes and gets a job on the street, like handing out pamphlets. Another one decides he's just gonna be a painter, even though he's never painted shit in his life. And the other one decides he's gonna go and try and seduce the landlady and get an extension on their rent. And as you can guess, these endeavors lead each of our 3 main characters to an erotic situation. Now, this movie doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, I don't know what porn really does, but like, even like in the porn realm of things, it doesn't take itself seriously. They're like laughing in the middle of it and everything. It's actually kind of funny. This just seems like a bunch of people that were all sexually active together, got together, and like all had kind of like this interest in this one comic book. They got together one afternoon and shot this shit in just a couple of different locations. Might even be the same fucking locations, just reset. I don't know. I will give the movie this much. It does have a story and it does stick to it. We have a problem that comes up, we have them trying to figure it out, and we get a resolution. And a whole lot of fucking in between. Now, let's not make any bones about it. The story here is thin as shit. It's almost non-existent. The lengths that they go to get these characters into situations to where they can have sex with someone are pretty much unneeded, because how they get to these situations and what happens in most of the situations doesn't make any fucking sense anyway, but whatever, they make it happen. I'm really struggling with how to review this movie, because I'm trying to do it like seriously like any other movie I would, but when you have a movie that is directed and stars someone named John Seaman, and they're just like laughing through the whole thing even when they're fucking, and they're just clearly stoned out of their fucking minds most of the time, and that's what they're doing on screen most of the time, is just smoking weed and fucking, it's really hard to find something to latch onto to critique. I mean, there are parts of the movie that I guess I could critique compared to, you know, today's standards and all. I don't necessarily think that that would be fair, though. I will say, though, if you're into, like, vintage porn, which, yeah, that's a thing, and people are into it, then you might find something here to like. So, alright, I'm gonna treat it like a real movie, I'm gonna review it like a movie, here we go. The story is, like I said, pretty thin, non-existent, and who gives a fuck? The acting? I mean, you can imagine. Don't let me lie there. There were actually 1 or 2 characters in this movie that, I mean, none of these are like Oscar winning by any means, but they were just a step above everyone else. They seemed a bit more comfortable in what they were doing. It wasn't real stilted. They actually seemed very natural in the performance they were giving. That being said, from a performance and narrative standpoint, there's not a whole lot here. The movie is technically labeled as an adult comedy, and there is comedy in it, and I can't say that I didn't chuckle once or twice, but it's not necessarily the funniest movie ever. Really, the funniest things about it is just how far out there it is, and some of the insane shit they do, and the tropes, those old school 60s, 70s vintage porn tropes that this movie falls into, they're on full display here. I found myself laughing at that stuff more than anything else. The funniest part of the movie, honestly, not to get too raunchy, which, I mean, I'm not afraid of that, but who knows who the fuck's watching this, but not to get too raunchy, the funniest part of the movie was at one point there are two lovely ladies that are, you know, getting together and doing their thing, and one of them busts out with an old school let's call it a back massager for YouTube's sake. Yeah, let's call it that. But it looks pretty much similar to ones that you would see nowadays, not necessarily for, you know, going, you know, inside of something, but more of a surface kind of thing. But anyway, it looks like those, but holy shit, this thing is ginormous. It looked like a fucking lightsaber. She pulled this shit out and it was just huge. I was like, holy fuck. And of course there was no battery. It had like a straight up plug that came out of it and like plugged into 210 into the goddamn wall. I mean, if something shorted out on this thing, heaven forbid, because that woman is fucking dead. The sheer size of this thing and the fact that it just like comes out of nowhere was comical enough, but the noise it makes, holy shit, it sounded like they turned on a fucking lawnmower in this room. This was the loudest goddamn back massager I've ever heard in my life. And it's kind of hard to take scenes like this very seriously. Maybe back then it wasn't, because that was kind of like the norm, but now it is absolutely not the norm. So when that happens and the whole time, all of a sudden you hear this noise while this situation's going on that's supposed to be all sensual and hot and all this, but all you hear the whole time is I mean, that's not even doing it justice, by the way, but that's all you hear the whole time. It's just like, I kind of just was laughing the whole time. I couldn't help it. And it's not their fault. They didn't have any other choices. That's just how things were back then. But it doesn't change the fact that the shit was funny as hell. There are a few moments like that throughout the film that admittedly did justify its comedy labeling. So I can say that the movie is actually kind of funny at times. Now, when it comes to the technical aspects of the film, I don't really want to comment on that too much because I could only find this movie in one place. It's like, it's really hard to find. I did finally find it, and if you are so inclined to find it, I can't link it here, but just search it. It didn't really take me that long to find it, but like, that's the only fucking place I could find to find it. You can find it online. You don't have to buy it or anything. You can stream it, but it is fairly low quality. I mean, the movie came out in 1973, and at that point in time, I doubt that much money was really put into it. From what I can tell, though, the sets are all fairly cheap. The costumes are fairly cheap. Pretty much everything's fairly cheap, but you know what? That shit, that's not why people, for the most part, are gonna be watching this movie, I don't think. The assets in this movie that people will be paying attention to were all fine, especially by the standards of that day. I can't believe I'm actually digging into the technical side of this fucking movie. Now, I will say that from an editing perspective, the movie is not edited very well. It's edited really choppy. Now, for the most part, the moments that count, you know, those moments that most people that are watching this are paying attention, it's fine, I guess. But the other moments, the story beats, are cut all to hell. There's some really weird jump cuts here or there that seem really off. But once again, the parts that most people are tuning into, they're fine. The editing there, you can definitely tell that's where they paid most of their attention to. Guys, what else can I really say about Up in Flames? It's a fucking porn, okay? I mean, it is what it is. You know what you're getting going into it, and yeah, it delivers that. Now, I can, of course, look at this movie like any other movie I review and just tear it to fucking pieces. It's a porn. I mean, what are you expecting? But instead, what I think I will do is compare it to other films of its ilk from that time. Not today's standards, but back then. And when it comes to that, I will say that the movie, while it's not terrible if that's what you're looking for, it's not great either. At best, it's just kind of mediocre. If that's your thing, and like I said, you're really into the vintage scene, then sure, you might find something here to like and get a few chuckles along the way. Hell, that vibrator scene is worth the price of admission, which is free, but you know what I mean. Me, myself, personally, wasn't really my thing. Now, I'm not saying I'm above porn. I am absolutely not, believe me. But this particular one just didn't really do it for me. It wasn't awful, but it's just not my thing. But if that is your thing, I don't really know if this one's going to totally scratch that itch. You might not hate it, but I don't think anybody's really going to love it either. So if vintage porn is your thing, then check out Up in Flames, at best on USA Up All Night.
It's not worth it.
Hi, I'm Gilbert Godfrey.
Hi, it's Raunchy on USA.
It's so big.
It's just not worth it.
Okay, so I highly doubt this movie would ever show up on USA Up All Night. In fact, I can guarantee it wouldn't, but maybe I should have said check it out on Cinemax Up All Night or After Dark or whatever the hell they used to call that. You know what I mean, though. Hell, it wouldn't even be on there. Like I said, this is hardcore. Check it out on YouPorn All Night or something like that. You get the idea. It's not really worth going out of your way to see. But if you are a comic book and vintage porn fan, then you might find something here to like. So check out Up in Flames one night and you might get a little excited. Who knows? So there it is, guys, my review of Up in Flames. Can't fucking believe I reviewed this movie. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, tap that ass and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys. Because I'll absolutely need it for this video because it will 100% be demonetized. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Cincinnati.
I think it's about time to do what comes naturally for Mr. Natural.
So what's next on the comic book movie review list? Oh, great! It's more scared the living fucking shit out of me when I was a kid fair. Looking forward to it.